Hello, everybody. Welcome to Perspectives. So glad you're with us today. We'll be talking to Dr. Kenneth Hicks this entire episode. Dr. Hicks is a department head, professor of history and political science here at RSU. It's good to have you with us.
It's happy to be here.
Where do I start? Things have gone, we're talking about a political zoo. Media folks play almost a bigger part. Did you hear what he said? You hear what she did?
Yeah.
So
Meta news.
Everybody's trying to garner headlines,
Yeah.
but some are just downright mean.
There's plenty of that too. It's unfortunate the role that social media plays in the political careers of members of Congress these days, because all too often these folks feel like they advance not by being a good legislator, but by getting clicks on social media. And so, and again, they follow Donald Trump. Barack Obama was the first president to use Twitter, but Trump was the first Twitter president. Mm-hmm. And he used it as a cudgel to enforce discipline within the party and to basically attack anyone that really, ran counter to whatever it was that he wanted. And so that's, unfortunately, politics is, there's a lot of mimicking that goes on, and what works right now is sensationalism and controversy, stoking controversy, and people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert have mastered that.
I was going to bring both of those folks up. Let's start with Ms. Greene, if you will. Our system of democracy is fragile, and at the same time, it's very strong. But this is not the first do-nothing Congress, is it?
No, there were some do-nothing Congresses in the 50s. In fact, Truman was able to successfully win re-election to his first election in his own right in 1948, railing against a do-nothing Congress. Right shortly after Franklin Roosevelt died, Republicans seized control of Congress for the first time in like almost 20 years. And he was successful in basically complaining about the inactivity of that Congress. And that Congress passed roughly 3 times the amount of legislation that the current Congress has passed.
I remember when Jimmy Carter was president, when things got really sticky, he'd truck or have his brother Billy come out and take the heat off. And Billy'd talk about anything, shoe size, beer, whatever you wanted to get into. And the media at the time would follow his lead and follow him around. And that left President Carter going, oh, thank God.
Billy was a good court jester.
Yeah.
He had that ability. Again, Trump is his own sort of court jester these days, and he has plenty of other, he has plenty of legal issues that he can bounce around to, keep people distracted.
I want to talk about some of the more colorful folks in Congress right now, and I want to start with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Very scary individual to me.
Ironically, she was elected out of the district where I went to college. I went to college at West Georgia College, which is now State University of West Georgia. It's the district that actually elected Newt Gingrich the first time.
Oh.
And now that district encompasses the whole northwest quadrant of Georgia. There are 2 really big, geographic districts in Georgia because Georgia is a huge sprawling state. And of course, the Atlanta suburbs are where much of the population of the state are held. And she's a University of Georgia graduate, to my shame. Although I'm a South Carolina graduate, but again, I think she has cut her teeth on the politics of personal destruction and the politics of controversy. And it's like people that know that levers work, but they don't know how to work them to effect.
Or how to use the clutch.
And she's continually threatening, the current speaker, Mike Johnson, with motions to vacate. and she is almost single-handedly paralyzing, the House and its actions, because in order to govern, Johnson's going to have to accommodate Democrats. Their margins from the start, from 2002, when Republicans won control of the House, they haven't had a large enough margin to really work their will. They've always needed to work across the aisle, but Kevin McCarthy couldn't do it, frankly, again because he built his career going all the way back to his time in California, basically railing against Democrats. They simply, it's like a basketball player that can only go right. They can only go further out.
I seem to sense, though, that Marjorie Taylor Greene has this feeling of self-importance that seems to outweigh her job.
Yeah.
And she would rather torch and burn than actually knuckle down and draft legislation.
There is a nihilism within the current Republican conference, especially in the House, that is very disturbing. There are people in that body that appear to be willing to burn down the Capitol just for the flames, not for any good purpose. Mm-hmm. And it is disturbing for anyone. I mean, I got into, I've had kids ask me, why don't you run for office? Like, I don't like politics that way. I'm fascinated by politics, but I'm a political scientist because I believe in the power of effective and efficient government. And I don't see that now, quite frankly, because a significant percentage of the people in Congress right now have been elected on a promise to not govern, on a promise that they're going to go to Washington and fight. Well, I don't know what that means. I don't know what this fight thing means. They're not going to govern. And that's to me one of the biggest problems that we have.
Which results in the do-nothing Congress label.
Absolutely.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, and I keep going back to this, when she started coming up with these lasers from outer space,
The Jewish space lasers, yeah.
The things she said about the Jewish folk, all the rhetoric that's just trash.
Oh, and she was a QAnon. She favorably, quoted QAnon, when she was running her podcast, when she was running for Congress. She said that Q was a patriot. And again, it's shocking. It's hard to characterize in any kind of analytical terms other than to simply say these are not serious people and they're not capable of governing.
Speaker Johnson has just been summoned to kiss the royal ring at Mar-a-Lago and get his marching orders. And I read that Marjorie Taylor Greene said, well, we'll see how he behaves when he comes back.
Yeah.
And that'll determine his future. And I'm thinking, whoa, she doesn't have that kind of clout.
But she says she does. We live in a world, where, it's whatever you can will into existence. We don't live in a world where facts really matter. It's terrifying. Yeah. And again, I have never I'm not a historian. I'm more of I'm actually a political theorist. I have never witnessed a time when a former president, a defeated former president, exercised the kind of control over a party that Donald Trump has over the Republican Party right now, particularly members of the House. They have just killed renewal of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That is essential. I mean, I'm a foreign policy guy too, but my master's thesis was in foreign policy. And that act, that is an essential tool for interdicting terrorists that want to do bad things to this country. And so, Trump tweeted, kill it. They spied on me. Well, that portion of the act wasn't even part of what he was alleging. He wasn't right on that count either.
Does he know what he's talking about?
No. No, again, he is trying to will his listeners into believing that he is a victim of this deep state conspiracy. He was not spied upon as a candidate in 2016. He put people around him that had connections to Russian intelligence that drew the attention of American intelligence agencies. In particular, two fellows whose name escaped me, Carter Page being one of them. This was a guy who had been in the Navy, and he was openly going, traveling to Russia, working with Russian business interests, and many Russian business interests have connections to Russian intelligence, and so he was viewed with some suspicion, and that is what the fact that Trump was surrounding himself with people like George Papadopoulos and Carter Page, and ultimately Paul Manafort, who again had not had anything to do with American electoral politics in more than 20 years, but had been deeply involved in Ukrainian electoral politics at the time when Russia was aggressively intervening in their electoral politics.
And one of the things that sort of puzzles me is when he called Speaker Johnson to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the papal ring and get his marching orders. Here's a guy who's facing 90 charges, any one of which should prevent him from being president of the United States if he's convicted.
Yeah, but even if he's convicted, there's nothing within the Constitution that would prevent him from serving. He could serve from prison.
Oh, that's a hoot.
Yeah, again, we are walking into really new territory, in part because the Republican primary electorate, a tiny fraction of the Republican electorate, by the way. I mean, he had sewn up the Republican nomination with less than a fifth of the Republican primary vote in actually a relatively small number of Republican states. It's not like the entire Republican Party, eligible, voters had a say in this. And he has significantly drawn a lot of people within, in Republican, many of them closed primaries. Now remember, a closed primary, only Republicans can vote in. He's had a lot of people vote other than him. And that raises questions about his electoral viability. He's got the same problem on Biden's side as well, because he's angered a lot of liberal and Muslim American voters with his support for Israel.
And yet he out garners cash contributions over Trump at every standing. And I've never seen Biden sell Bibles, his version.
No.
I've never seen him sell tennis shoes, his version.
No.
And it seems to me there's no level that man won't stoop to get money flowing in.
Well, he needs the money to, for all the legal defenses he's dealing with. And again, he kicked out Ronna McDaniel as chair of the RNC because she refused to shut down Republican debates, and because he was refusing, he simply wanted to be coronated. And so now he has his daughter-in-law as the co-chair of the RNC, and the RNC has effectively said every $10 that goes into the RNC, a certain percentage of that is going to go to defending Donald Trump.
God help us.
He had to post a $175 million bond in the aftermath of the civil litigation against him.
Down from 475 to 147. Yeah.
But even so, $175 million was more than he was going to individually be able to pay. He had to get a bond, and the guy out in California that gave it to him, I mean, what kind of influence does that guy now have over him? And what kind of influence does the bank that guy controls, that apparently has a lot of money, a lot of foreign money sloshing around through it in the Cayman Islands? How much influence do those folks have?
I think we're going to take a break right about now. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Lauren Boebert. Interesting person.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. Short break. We'll be back with more right after this. And we're back. Lauren Boebert, strange woman, late night TV. All three of them ran video of her cavorting with somebody. I don't know if it was her husband or not, but in public.
It's not her husband. She's going through a divorce. It's reflective of what happens with populism, and this has happened both far right and far left at various, in the early 1970s, you had a period where everyone on the left said, don't trust anyone over 30. The first thing that happens is anyone that has any experience or expertise is is implicated somehow in the corruption.
And I remember Wilbur Mills cavorting, in the tidal basin with Fannie Fox. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and of course John Edwards had his little deal, and who was it? Not John Kerry, but Bob Kerry.
Yeah.
When he was running in '84, he got caught in, what was it? The monkey business was the boat that he was caught on. Ironically enough, yeah, that is all too often. Those kinds of things are career wreckers. And she's got a real, she's going to have a tough go getting reelected. She actually, I believe, is planning on moving to a rival, jumping to another district.
I saw that.
Because Western Colorado is very conservative. And she's actually moving to a district where Ken Buck used to be. Ken Buck is very conservative. He's a former prosecutor. But he has gotten sick of just how dysfunctional the House is. So he actually retired early. He didn't even serve out his full term. So she is talking about moving over to that one. But she's got, I think there's double-digit primary numbers on the Republican side of that.
You're kidding me.
And so she's going to be one of many, and there will almost certainly be a runoff. And so it's not a guarantee that she'll be able to win that
Do you
seat.
place much credibility in the conversations that are being held now indicating that the House is going to turn over in the election, that it will become Democratic controlled?
If I were a betting man, and I'm not, I would say that Democrats have a 75% likelihood that they'll win. I think that for a number of reasons. One, because in 2022, the main reason Republicans were able to win the House was largely because of gerrymandering in a handful of states, in Florida, in North Carolina, and actually there was a judicial redistricting in New York that made 5 seats more competitive than they ordinarily would have been. I don't see them holding a lot of those seats that they carried in 2022. There have been a number, in Alabama, the Supreme Court basically told them that that the state had to create another majority-minority district, which means almost certainly that it will be Democratic. Republicans have done everything they could in those deep South states. Louisiana was in a very similar legal strait. And so, historically, in the South, Republicans have tried to find ways of making common cause with their black populations to minimize the number of Democratic seats available.
But they still have done such things as, no, you can't bring drinking water if you got to stand in line to vote.
That's
what is
that? Again, it is an attempt to suppress the black vote. Especially in states like Georgia, where black people were murdered for daring to vote. You have this phenomenon of souls to the polls. They like to go vote en masse as a congregation on Sunday, the power in numbers. And so they go, and it's a huge number of people, and so oftentimes they find themselves waiting in long lines in these big urban districts. And they are trying to make it as unpleasant as possible to compel, to get those people to not vote.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is already on record as saying she fully intends, if Trump loses, she fully intends to go through the voting records of anywhere in the country that he didn't poll well.
Sure.
Do you think that'll happen?
I don't think the
pure conjecture.
controversies surrounding voting are going to just die down. I think that Donald Trump has opened Pandora's box. I think he has controversialized the act of voting in ways that's going to be very hard. And again, if you don't have voting, you can't really have a democracy. And that is, to me, one of the clearest indicators of Donald Trump's political attitude. Elections to him are an inconvenience because they possibly, he could possibly lose.
And he's already told us what he's going to do when he gets in.
Well, sure. He's going to be a dictator from day one. Now, he said he said I'll only be a dictator on day one. History shows that anyone who is a dictator on day one will be a dictator on day two, and henceforth. That is simply not the way human nature works.
That's pretty scary stuff.
Sure it is.
Not a lot of talk coming out of the Senate. What do you see happening there?
Not a lot. Again, anything legislatively, both houses have to act on. And of course, the Democrats currently control the Senate, again, very narrowly. But they actually have a 51 to 49, majority.
Think they'll hang on to it?
No. This is again, if I were a betting man, and I'm an educator, so I can't be a betting man.
Sure you can.
I don't make that much money. So I'm too prudential to be a betting man. I would say that the odds are better than 60% that Republicans will win. Now, that stated, Republicans have shown a genius for selecting really extreme candidates that give Democrats a good chance. But they have to win races in places like Montana, which are very difficult. And John Tester has won 2 races. He is a quintessential Montana farmer, and so he has been able to weather a number of storms. But this one's coming in a presidential election year, and so in those relatively small states, Democratic senators have to get lucky. And so there are seats, in Pennsylvania, which may be a tough one, although again, the guy running there his dad was a governor there, very strong. He's won two races.
We got 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I also see a number of things happening of a more personal nature than anything else I've ever seen in Congress. The governor of California is married to the woman who is the ex-wife of Donald Trump. And she's the one that went out saying, or that he's dating her, or married to her, or something. The best is yet to come. Remember that?
Yeah, I know that Donald Trump Jr.'s current girlfriend is Gavin Newsom's ex-wife.
Okay. And that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you square dancing. We're going to call the signals here.
Yeah.
Switch partners.
Politics makes for strange bedfellows.
It does.
And it always has.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. No literalisms there. But at the same time, politics is, power is such an incredible draw for some people.
We got about 30 seconds. What's the most important thing Democratic and Republican voters can do right now to help bring things back together between now and the time we go to the polls?
They need to try and become better informed. They need to adopt a more broad media gathering strategy, both sides. Too many people on the left get caught up in MSNBC, and too many people on the right get caught up in Fox World. You need to break out of those ideological bubbles and try to piece together a real sense of what reality is, and where your interests lie. I have infinite faith in the American voter properly informed.
We've got to hold on to this thing called democracy.
Absolutely.
We absolutely do. Hey, thank you. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know.
Happy to do it.
That's all the time we have for this edition of Perspectives. Thank you for being a part. We'll see you next time.